He smelled the town before he saw it. Wood smoke and something sour underneath it, like milk left too long in the sun. Scout slowed without being told, dropping from that easy trot that covered miles without announcing them into something careful, something that read the ground before committing weight to it. The road into Jessup's Hollow came through a narrow draw between two limestone ridges, and the wind funneled down through it, carrying everything the town wanted to hide. Rot, fear, the particular stillness that settles over a place where people have stopped believing anyone is coming. He saw her from 300 yards. She was sitting on a flat rock just off the trail where the draw opened into the valley, and she wasn't moving. Her dress was pale cotton, washed so many times it had gone the color of old bone, and it stretched tight across a belly that said she was 7 months along, maybe 8. Her hands were folded on top of that belly the way women do when they're protecting something they can't see yet. Her face was turned toward the sound of the hooves, but her eyes didn't track. They were pale and still, the color of fog over water, and they looked at everything and nothing at the same time. Scout stopped 10 feet from her. The stranger didn't speak. He watched. She didn't flinch at the silence, which meant she was used to not seeing, used to reading the world through what it gave her ears and her skin and the soles of her feet. This wasn't new blindness. This was years. "You ride alone," she said, not a question. "One horse, no wagon, no second set of hooves." She tilted her head slightly. "Heavy man on a strong horse. The gait's not military, but it's trained. You've ridden a long time today, but you're not in a hurry." He still didn't speak. "My name is Ruth Caldwell. I've been sitting on this rock for 4 days waiting for someone who rides alone. Because the men who ruin this town never ride alone. They always come in threes." He looked past her toward Jessup's Hollow. From here he could see the main street, maybe a quarter mile of packed dirt with buildings on both sides. A church steeple at the far end, leaning slightly east. A livery with its doors open. A saloon with a sign he couldn't read from this distance. It looked like 40 other towns he'd ridden through. Ordinary, small. The kind of place that exists to serve the ranches around it and nothing more. 4 days, he said. His voice was quiet. "On this rock. I brought water and biscuits. Charlie Pratt's boy brings me more each morning before dawn. He's 11. He's the only one brave enough to walk out this far." She paused. "I heard what you did in Coulter. The telegraph operator there has a cousin who works the wire in Jessup's Hollow. Word travels on the wire faster than it travels on the road. They said a man on a horse rode into a town that had given up, and by sundown the men who held it were gone. Every one of them." She turned her blind eyes toward him with an accuracy that unsettled him. "I don't need to see you to know what you are." He dismounted. Scout shifted his weight and blew air through his nostrils, already reading the valley, already cataloging the wind patterns and the distant sounds, and the way the town sat too quiet for midday. The stranger crouched in front of the woman and studied her face. Mid-20s. Thin but not starving. The blindness was congenital, he guessed. Her eyes had never worked. She'd built her entire world without them. "Who's running the town?" he asked. "A man named Virgil Boone. Came in 14 months ago with a lawyer named Sitwell and 4 men. Bought the feed store first, then the lumber yard. Then he bought the note on the bank from a creditor in Abilene. Once he had the bank, he had everything." Her voice was steady, practiced. She'd rehearsed this. She'd been sitting on this rock for 4 days rehearsing it. "He controls credit. Every rancher within 40 miles owes the bank. He calls notes early, forces sales, buys the land at a quarter what it's worth. My husband's ranch was the first he took." "Your husband, Thomas Caldwell. He died 9 months ago. Boone's men came to collect on a note that wasn't due for 6 months. Thomas told them to leave. They came back that night." Her hands tightened on her belly. "They said it was his heart, that he fell from his horse riding home from the saloon. But Thomas didn't drink. He hadn't been to the saloon in 2 years. And his horse came home without him at 3 in the morning with blood on the saddle that nobody wanted to explain." The stranger was quiet for a long time. He looked at the town again, then at her belly, then at her blind eyes that saw more than most people's working ones. "You're carrying his child," he said. "Due in 8 weeks, and the ranch is gone." Boone filed a claim the week after Thomas died, saying the note was in default. Judge Whitfield in the county seat signed it without a hearing. I wasn't even told until it was done. She reached into the pocket of her dress and pulled out a folded piece of paper. But Thomas kept records. Every payment, every receipt, every letter from the bank. He kept them in a box under the floorboards because he didn't trust Boone's bank to keep honest books. I can't read them, but I know what they are because Thomas read every one to me the night he filed them. 14 months of records. Every payment made on time. Every receipt signed. The stranger took the paper, unfolded it. It was a list, written in a careful hand. Dates and amounts. Payment records going back 3 years. Everyone on time. Everyone documented. Where are the originals? He asked. Still under the floorboards. Boone's men searched the house after Thomas died, but they didn't find them. They weren't looking for floorboards. They were looking for a strong box. A thin smile crossed her face. Thomas always said the best hiding place is the one that doesn't look like a hiding place. He folded the paper and put it in his shirt pocket. How many men does Boone have? 6 now. He started with 4. Added 2 more after he took the bank. Pike and Scanlon are the dangerous ones. Pike carries 2 pistols, and Scanlon was a deputy in Wichita before he got run out for beating a prisoner to death. The other 4 are muscle. Ranch hands with guns who do what they're told for $40 a month and free whiskey. The lawyer, Sitwell. He's the one who makes it all look legal. Every filing, every claim, every note called early. Sitwell draws up the papers and Judge Whitfield stamps them. I don't know if Whitfield is paid or just lazy, but the result is the same. The stranger stood. He looked at the town for a long time. Scout stepped closer to him and pressed his muzzle against the stranger's shoulder, which meant the horse had finished his own assessment and didn't like what he'd found. The saloon, he said. Who runs it? Nora Briggs. She owned it before Boone came. He hasn't taken it yet because he uses it. His men drink there every night. It's where they do business. Nora hates him, but she serves the drinks because the alternative is a burned building and no livelihood. The livery? Old Sam Fenton, 70 years old. Pretends to be deaf so Boone's men talk freely around him. He hears everything. Telegraph? Runs through the freight office. Boone's man Dunbar works the counter, but the actual wire operator is a boy named Jesse Pratt, Charlie's older brother, 16. He sends what Boone tells him to send and keeps his mouth shut. But Charlie told me Jesse copies every message Boone sends into a notebook he keeps in the rafters of the freight office. She paused. Jesse doesn't know Charlie told me that. The stranger almost smiled. Almost. A 16-year-old keeping copies of a land baron's telegrams. People in small towns are smarter than men like Boone think they are. They can't fight him with guns, but they've been fighting him with patience. Waiting. Keeping records. Remembering. He helped her stand. She was unsteady, the pregnancy making her balance uncertain on the rocky ground, and she gripped his forearm with both hands. Her grip was strong. Stronger than it should have been for a woman her size. She'd been gripping things her whole life to navigate a world she couldn't see. I need you to stay out here until dark, he said. Can Charlie's boy come get you? I'll send him when I hear the evening birds. They start at dusk. I've never needed a clock. He led Scout down the draw toward Jessup's Hollow. The town grew larger with each step, and so did the silence. Doors closed. Windows shuttered despite the heat. A dog sleeping in the shade of a water trough was the only living thing on the main street. Even the dog didn't lift its head when Scout's hooves hit the packed dirt. It had learned that hoofbeats meant nothing good. He tied Scout at the livery rail. A man emerged from the back, stooped and white-haired, moving with the careful economy of someone whose joints had started charging interest on every movement. Sam Fenton? The stranger said. The old man cupped his hand around his ear. Eh? You can drop that. Ruth Caldwell sent me. Sam Fenton's hand came down, his eyes sharpened. About damn time somebody came. Tell me about Pike and Scanlon. Pike's fast but predictable. Right-hand draw always goes for the man on the left first. Scanlon's the one you watch. He doesn't draw first. He waits for you to commit and then he shoots where you're going to be, not where you are. Where do they sleep? Above the saloon. Boone took the house at the end of Main Street. Sitwell sleeps above the bank. The other 4 rotate between the bunkhouse behind the feed store and wherever they pass out drunk. What time does Boone go to the saloon? Every night at 8, back corner table, faces the door. Sitwell joins him at 8:30 with papers. They do business until 10. The stranger thanked Sam with a nod and walked Scout to the water trough. The saloon door opened and a woman appeared. Mid-40s, dark hair pulled back, arms crossed. Nora Briggs, he said. You know my name, but I don't know yours. I don't have one to trade. She studied him, the poncho, the hat, the way he stood. Ruth sent you. She sat on a rock for 4 days to make sure I got here. That girl has more steel in her than every man left in this town combined. Come inside. The saloon was empty at 3 in the afternoon, which told him everything about how the town spent its days. Nora poured him whiskey and he didn't drink it. I need 2 things from you. First, I need to know if there's a back way into the freight office that doesn't pass the front counter. There's a cellar door on the east side, leads into the storeroom. Jesse showed it to Charlie once when they were playing. She paused. You want the notebook. I want every telegram Boone has sent or received in 14 months. And the second thing? Tonight, when Boone and Sitwell are at their corner table at 8 o'clock, I need every remaining honest person in this town in this saloon. Not to fight, just to stand. Can you do that? Nora Briggs looked at him for a long time. Then she untied her apron, folded it on the bar, and walked to the door. Give me 2 hours, she said. I know every back door and kitchen window in Jessup's Hollow. Word of mouth is the only thing Boone hasn't figured out how to buy. She left. He sat in the empty saloon alone and waited. He was good at waiting. He'd built his life around it. At 4:30, he went to the freight office. Dunbar was at the front counter, and 2 of Boone's men sat on the porch playing cards. He circled around the block until he found the cellar door on the east side, unlocked. He went down into darkness, up wooden stairs, and into the storeroom behind the counter. He could hear Dunbar through the wall. The rafters were exposed, rough-cut pine. He ran his hand along the nearest beam until he felt it. A leather-bound notebook wedged into the gap where beam met wall. He opened it. Jesse Pratt's handwriting was small and meticulous. Every telegram. Incoming and outgoing. Dates, times, recipients, full text. 14 months of Virgil Boone's communications laid out in a 16-year-old's careful hand. Land purchases coordinated with the creditor in Abilene. Instructions to Sitwell on which notes to call. Messages to Judge Whitfield. And one, dated 3 weeks before Thomas Caldwell's death, that read, Caldwell won't sell. Handle it. No more talking. The stranger closed the notebook and put it in his shirt pocket next to Ruth's payment records. He left the way he came and sat on a hay bale in the livery reading every page twice. Then he cross-referenced the telegrams with Ruth's payment records. The picture assembled itself with precision. Boone had called Caldwell's note 6 months early. The payments were all current. Sitwell filed the claim knowing it was fraudulent. And one telegram to Whitfield, dated 2 days before the ruling, said, Same terms as discussed. Confirm by Wednesday. That was enough. At 5 o'clock, he walked through the front door of the telegraph office. Dunbar looked up from his newspaper. The 2 card players on the porch stopped playing. I need to send a telegram, the stranger said. Telegraph's for residents. Then it's for Ruth Caldwell. She's a resident. Ruth Caldwell doesn't own property in this town anymore. She will by morning. He set a silver dollar on the counter. Federal Land Office, Abilene. Dunbar looked at the dollar, looked at the stranger, looked at the 2 men on the porch who were now standing. I don't think you want to send that telegram, Dunbar said. I don't think you want to be the man who refused to transmit a federal communication. That's a territorial offense. 6 months in the Abilene stockade. Dunbar sent the telegram. Then a second to the territorial marshal's office, and a third to the land records clerk in the county seat. 3 telegrams. 3 threads pulled from the edges of Virgil Boone's empire. He walked out. The 2 men from the porch were gone. They'd left to tell Boone. He'd counted on that. He wanted Boone to sit in his house thinking about what those telegrams meant. Fear works best when it has time to grow. At 6 o'clock, he rode to the Caldwell Ranch, 2 miles south. The house smelled like dust and absence. He found the floorboard Ruth described, 3rd plank from the wall in the bedroom. 23 people. In a town that had been hiding behind locked doors for 14 months. At 8 o'clock, the door opened and Virgil Boone walked in. He was a tall man, well-dressed, with the kind of face that photographs well and conceals everything. Sitwell was behind him, thin and precise, carrying a leather folder. Pike and Scanlon flanked them. Boone stopped. He looked at the room, at the people, at the stranger. You're the one who sent the telegrams, Boone said. I sent 3. The Federal Land Office in Abilene now has a formal complaint filed on behalf of Ruth Caldwell, documenting 14 months of fraudulent land seizures. The Territorial Marshal has a copy of every telegram you've sent through this office, including the one where you ordered Thomas Caldwell handled. He let that word sit in the room. Handled. And the county land clerk has been notified that every filing Sitwell has submitted on your behalf is under review pending a fraud investigation. Sitwell's face went white. He looked at Boone. Boone didn't look back. And those people? Boone gestured at the room. You think farmers and shopkeepers scare me? They're not here to scare you. They're here to witness. Every person in this room will testify at the territorial hearing I've requested by telegram. The stranger set the 3 receipts on the bar. Thomas Caldwell's final payment, made on time, signed by your bank clerk. The note you called was current, and you knew it. The room was silent, the kind of silence that has weight. Pike's hand moved toward his holster. The stranger didn't move. He didn't need to. 23 pairs of eyes were on Pike, and Pike knew that whatever happened next would happen in front of witnesses. His hand stopped. Your men are going to start doing arithmetic tonight, the stranger said, speaking only to Boone now. $40 a month and free whiskey against a federal investigation and accessory charges for land fraud and conspiracy to commit murder. That's the math. By midnight, most of them will decide the math doesn't work. He was right. By 9:30, the first two muscle men walked to the livery, saddled their horses, and rode west without looking back. By 10, a third followed. By 10:30, Pike came downstairs with his saddlebags over his shoulder. He stopped in front of the stranger. "Nothing personal," Pike said. "I know." Pike left. At 11, Scanlon walked out the back door without a word. That left Boone and Sitwell and one last kid no older than 20, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else on Earth. "You can go," the stranger told the kid. The kid went. Sitwell put his leather folder on the table. "I'll cooperate with the investigation," he said, not looking at Boone. He stood and walked out with the careful steps of a man abandoning a sinking ship. Boone sat alone. The saloon was full of people who had been afraid of him for 14 months, and were not afraid anymore. Ruth Caldwell's blind eyes were pointed directly at him, and even though she couldn't see him, he felt that gaze more than any other in the room. "You've made a mistake," Boone said quietly. "I have resources you don't know about." "You had resources. Past tense. Your lawyer just turned witness. Your men just rode out. Your telegrams are in federal hands. And Thomas Caldwell's payment records prove every claim you filed was fraud." The stranger paused. "You can leave tonight, or you can wait for the territorial marshal. He'll be here in 3 days. I'm told the Abilene stockade is unpleasant." Boone stood. He buttoned his coat. He looked around the room one more time at the faces of people he'd controlled and stolen from, and the stranger watched him realize what men like Boone always realize too late. That power built on paper and fear collapses when the paper is exposed and the fear runs out. He left. The door closed, and the room exhaled. Nora poured whiskey. Real pours this time, generous ones, and quiet voices filled the saloon the way it should have been filled for 14 months. Jesse Pratt put his arm around his little brother Charlie, and the boy leaned into him the way children do when they finally feel safe. The stranger walked to Ruth. When she heard his boots, she reached out. He took her hand. "Is it over?" she said. "The territorial marshal will be here in 3 days. He'll need your records. Thomas's box under the floorboards. Everything." "I know where every paper is. Thomas read them all to me." Her voice broke slightly. "He used to say, 'Another one for the box, Ruthie.' Every time. I didn't know he was building the thing that would save us." The stranger didn't speak for a moment. He looked at her hand on his, at her belly where Thomas Caldwell's child was growing, at her blind eyes that had seen Boone's operation more clearly than anyone with sight. "You sat on a rock for 4 days, he said. "I'd have sat there for 40. She said it the way you state a fact about weather. "This child is going to be born on Caldwell land. Thomas promised me that. He promised me the cottonwoods would still be there and the creek would still run past the kitchen window." She pressed her hand against her belly. "I can't see those cottonwoods. I've never seen them. But I know what they sound like in the wind, and I will not let a man like Virgil Boone take that sound from my child." He helped her stand. Nora came around the bar and put her arm around Ruth, steadying her, and the two women stood together in a room full of people who were remembering what it felt like to own their own town. He left at midnight. Scout was waiting, already pointed north, already knowing. Behind them, Jessup's Hollow was lit up. Every window. Lanterns and candles in windows that had been dark for over a year. The town was breathing. He rode north under a sky so thick with stars it looked like someone had spilled salt across black cloth. He thought about Ruth's hand on his arm, the strength in it. He thought about Thomas Caldwell filing receipts under floorboards with the discipline of a man who knew he might not survive, but wanted to make sure the truth did. He thought about Jesse Pratt, 16 years old, copying telegrams into a notebook because even a boy could tell the difference between right and wrong when he saw it spelled out in dots and dashes on a wire. 8 weeks from now, a baby would be born on a ranch with cottonwoods in a creek, and its mother would hold it and describe every sound. The baby would never know how close it came to being born with nothing, because a blind woman sat on a rock, because a dead man kept records, because a boy hid a notebook in the rafters. He touched Scout's neck. The horse settled into that easy trot that covered miles without announcing them. North. Always north. For now there was just the sound of hooves on grass and the stars and the silence that comes after something broken gets put back together. If this is where you found him, if Jessup's Hollow is your first ride, the beginning is waiting. Both stories are in the description. Watch them. Come back. Tell me one thing in the comments. Which moment stayed with you? 2 words. That's all. And if you want to know where the trail goes next, subscribe. New stories every week. I'll see you on the road.